this list isn't about 2D games that feature ninjas. It's about games that understands the balance between difficulty and control, pushing the players enough to force them to master the game, and the catharsis of eventually beating it, knowing that the victory is hard-won through skill and mastery. Now, here are games that rival Tecmo's super popular originals. Here are 15 insanely good 2D Ninja Gaiden games you need to play. Cyber Shadow 2021. Developed by Mechanical Head Studios and published by Yacht Club Games, this title is practically a modern version of the original Ninja Gaiden. You play as Shadow, a cybernetic ninja resurrected from stasis, in a desolated future where the ruins of Mecha City have been overrun by synthetic life forms harvesting spirits for power. The game has pixel art cutscenes between levels to tell its story about the destruction of the Shadow Clan and the dark secrets behind the mechanical takeover. The gameplay here preserves the difficulty of Ninja Gaiden, but does away with the stiffness and clunkiness of classic design. You start with a basic jump and slash, but you can permanently evolve by rescuing fallen clan members who grant you ninjutsu abilities. You'll unlock shurikens, rising fire attacks, and a crucial sprint slash that turns the combat from basic hacking and slashing to a high-velocity attack-chaining movement fighter, creating a fun genre shift as you progress through the game. You know, revisiting old levels where you had to carefully fight your way through, but now you can smoothly slice and run your way through is always cathartic to experience. Oniken 2012. This game was released way before the retro revival of the late 2010s, and developed by the Brazilian studio Joy Masher. This title is a real tribute to the hardcore action platformers of the late 1980s, such as Ninja Gaiden and Vice Project Doom. You play as Zaku, a legendary mercenary in a post-apocalyptic 2098, where humanity has been nearly wiped out by a global war and is now oppressed by a robotic military organization called Oniken. The gameplay is very 80s, with precise and stiff controls that require timing and pattern memorization. Zaku's primary weapon is his sword, but he also manages sub-weapons like grenades to deal with ranged threats. There's also a Berserker mode where it's handled differently here than most other games, as you have to sacrifice your collected power-ups for increased damage and defense. The game features 6 missions with over 18 boss battles, with no checkpoints, very 80s. Oniken adheres strictly to the color limitations and resolution of the NES hardware, avoiding modern effects in order to maintain that consistent 80s aesthetic. Vengeful Guardian Moonrider 2023. We're switching from NES-inspired games to a more Genesis-inspired one. Developed by Joy Masher, you play as Moonrider, a cyborg ninja super soldier created by a totalitarian state to oppress humanity. However, upon activation, Moonrider rejects its programming and embarks on a relentless quest for vengeance against its creators and the fellow super soldiers guarding them. The visuals, story, and storytelling are very much like a 90s anime OVA. Moonrider is agile, capable of wall jumping, dashing, and performing a powerful diving kick. The game also has a modifier chip mechanic where hidden throughout the levels are chips that grant passive perks, such as double jumps, health regeneration, or a glass cannon mode that increases damage at the cost of instant death, allowing for different playstyles and builds. You can also take on the 6 main stages in any order, defeating bosses to acquire unique special weapons, and by now, you might have noticed the game is a very fun hybrid of Ninja Gaiden and Mega Man, a combination that plays very well in this case. Ninja Issen 2023. Ninja Issen, also known as Ninja Issen the Scroll of Dimension, is very much a modern game, which you can see from the visuals, effects, and gameplay here. Developed by the solo Korean developer Asteroid J, this game is smoother and busier than the previous games on this list. You play as Kiba, a ninja from the past who is falsely accused of assassinating his clan's grandmaster, and he must clear his name while battling waves of robotic soldiers and cyber ninjas. For such a basic story, this game has a surprising number of comic-style cutscenes and frequent dialogue about the mystery of Kiba's time displacement and his rivalry with the antagonist, Suikyu. Beyond the standard katana slashes and shuriken throws, the core mechanic is a teleportation skill that allows Kiba to throw his sword and instantly warp to its location. You can warp through lasers, close the distance on distant enemies instantly, or dodge attacks that would otherwise be unavoidable. It's a fun, hectic blend of pure combat, puzzle platforming, high-speed, high-stakes pure platforming, and occasional shooter segments, all of which is pure arcade fun. Ninja Senki DX, 2016. In an exact reversal of Ninja Issen, Ninja Senki DX looks like a game that belongs in the Pico 8. Created by Jonathan Levine, this title is a deluxe update of a freeware classic. You play as Hayate, a blue-clad shinobi on a rampage to avenge the death of Princess Kinohime at the hands of a demon. The story is minimal, serving only as a backdrop for the action, much like the 8-bit classics it emulates. Hayate is a fixed set of tools, a double jump, and a limitless supply of shurikens. You must navigate 16 deadly scenes filled with precision jumps and enemy patterns that require planning and twitch reactions. The regular mode isn't all that hard, no harder than any other Game Boy style platformer, but there's an optional hard mode that I really haven't tried yet that could provide a greater challenge, as well as specific challenges for every level, such as killing every enemy or collecting all coins. A vibrant 8-bit aesthetic that homages the specific limitations and charm of the Game Boy era creates an experience that feels like a handheld classic from 1990. Shadow of the Ninja, 1990. Shadow of the Ninja, also known as Blue Shadow in Europe and Kage in Japan, was like a co-op 2-player Ninja Gaiden. Developed by Natsume, who also developed Shatterhand, you play as Hayate or Kaede, two ninjas from the Iga clan sent to assassinate the dictator Emperor Garuda in a futuristic dystopian 2029 New York City. Essentially the classic infiltrate the stronghold and take out the boss arcade plot. The gameplay is less like the twitch reflex style of Ninja Gaiden and more methodical, rhythmic combat. You have a sword for close range and a Kusarigama chain sickle that can be thrown in multiple directions, allowing you to attack enemies from reach. The game is tough but fair, and its biggest selling point is its excellent 2-player mode, one of the best on the NES, where you and your buddy can fight through the enemy horde together with no flickering or slowdown. The visuals are also top tier for the NES, utilizing deep blacks and different dithering effects to create depth and shadows in the art, making the space feel larger than it actually is. Shadow of the Ninja, Reborn, 2024. It's a bit strange to be listing the remaster right after the original in a list, but I have my reasons. Developed by Tango Project, the same veteran team within Natsume Atari responsible for the original NES version, this isn't a remaster, but rather a complete reimagining of the entire game from the ground up. Really, the only thing that's the same as the original is the story. Pretty much everything else in this game has been changed and upgraded. For example, while the original was known for its stiff, methodical pacing, Reborn has a more dynamic movement system, including wall runs and an air dash that adds more verticality to the game. Also, you don't just have your katana and Kusarigama, as now you have access to many sub-weapons like caltrops, shurikens, and clubs that you can collect and manage like a resource. The new art and sprites are amazing 16-bit works with many parallaxing layers and visual effects. Animations are smoother and everything is more detailed. Playing this game is practically a completely different experience from playing the original, which is why I recommend both, as they have wildly different appeals. Ninja 5-0, 2003. Developed by Hudson Soft, Ninja 5-0, also known as Ninja Cop in Europe, is a Game Boy Advance exclusive that is widely considered one of the best portable action games ever made. You play as Joe Osugi, a ninja detective tasked with taking down terrorist organizations and rescuing hostages across high-rise buildings, banks, and airports. A very fun and absurd premise. So the gameplay is like Ninja Gaiden meets Bionic Commando, as your grappling hook is the central mechanic, as Joe can fire his hook in any direction to swing from ceilings, scale walls, and zipline across gaps. You're swinging through the air, slashing enemies in mid-flight, and crashing through glass windows in a cinematic action game. The combat is lethal. You go down in a few hits, and just one slash of your sword is enough to kill an enemy. So, you gotta be careful and plan every confrontation beforehand. The power-up mechanic is unique, where rescuing hostages powers up your sword, granting you ranged energy waves and screen-clearing ninjutsu attacks. But taking damage degrades your weapon, forcing you to play perfectly to maintain power. Hagane, The Final Conflict. 1994. Hagane, The Final Conflict is a technical showcase that really pushes the SNES. It's one of the most artistically impressive games on the console. Developed by Cap Production and published by Hudson Soft, this title drops you into a war between rival ninja clans, casting you as Hagane, a cyborg warrior resurrected to stop the Koma clan from destroying the world with the Holy Grail. This techno-feudal aesthetic that mixes traditional Japanese culture with gritty cyberpunk tech really screams Ninja Gaiden. Unlike typical platformers where you primarily use one weapon, Hagane gives you instant access to 4 distinct tools. A katana for close range, a chain for vertical reach and grappling, shurikens for distance, and grenades for crowd control. You must cycle through these on the fly while utilizing an extensive movement set that includes wall jumps, somersaults, and a dedicated spin attack. You must utilize all the tools the game gives you in order to surpass the difficulty of the game. The sprites are large and very detailed, and although these animations aren't the smoothest, the details really work for the aesthetic they're going for. Ninja Spirit, 1988. Also known as Saigo no Nindo in Japan, Ninja Spirit is a weird game, even compared to the other games in this list. Developed by Irem, this game is a power fantasy in a unique but still challenging way, as you still go down in just a few hits, but in return, your attacks are so massive and powerful that you feel invincible. You play as Senki Kage, a young ninja on a quest to avenge his father's death and unlock the secrets of his birthright. The story is minimal, but the art and gameplay are the real draw here. Instead of starting weak, Senki Kage has access to switchable weapons right from the start. The katana, shurikens, bombs, and Kusarigama chain sickle. There's also the signature shadow clones, which you can summon up to 2 shadow clones that can mimic your every move and attack, basically tripling your firepower and area of effect. This, combined with the many enemies and projectiles on screen at once, creates a ton of chaos, and the difficulty comes with trying to manage this chaos while trying to maintain superior positioning. Vice, Project Doom, 1991. Released late in the NES lifecycle, Vice Project Doom, also known as Gun Deck in Japan, is a genre-defying game that is one of the best on the console. Developed by ICOM, you play as Quinhart, a detective in a futuristic world investigating a mysterious alien substance and a criminal syndicate. The narrative here is surprisingly good for a non-RPG NES game, using elaborate anime-style cinematic cutscenes with great artwork that I'm astonished could fit into an NES cart. The core experience is a side-scrolling action platformer where Hart wields a laser whip, a .44 Magnum, and grenades, allowing for a mix of melee and ranged combat that's very fluid for the NES. However, the game frequently shifts genres. You could be driving a spy car in a top-down Spy Hunter-style shooter, and next you're in a first-person rail shooter segment blasting enemies like an arcade light gun game. Despite this variety, the controls remain tight across all modes. How they managed to fit all of this into the NES? Well, that's the real technical marvel there. Kabuki, Quantum Fighter, 1990. The Matrix meets Kabuki Theater is such a strange mix. Developed by Human Entertainment, who would later create the Clock Tower series, you play as Colonel Scott O'Connor, a military operative who transfers his consciousness into a mainframe computer to stop a rogue virus. But instead of manifesting as a soldier or a spaceship, the computer interprets his avatar as a Kabuki actor with long red hair, in yet another fusion of cyberpunk and feudal Japanese aesthetics. Your primary weapon here is your hair. O'Connor whips his long, red mane to attack enemies. There's also a chip system where, throughout the levels, you collect data chips that can be traded for special weapons, such as projectile energy blasts or a remote control fist that flies across the screen. You can also use your hair for platforming, as your hair allows you to hang from hooks and swing across gaps. The sprites are large and expressive, with backgrounds that are a trippy mix of digital circuitry and organic Geiger-esque horror, and feudal Japanese iconography that makes this world really unique. Shatterhand, 1991. Developed by Natsume and published by Jaleco, Shatterhand is a late-era NES title that's a platformer beat-em-up. You control Steve Herman, a Bronx police officer who's brutally mutilated during a crackdown on a military cyborg group, only to be resurrected with cybernetic limbs to take down the organization known as Metal Command. While this doesn't have the acrobatics of a ninja game, it still has the same cinematic action feel, requiring players to deflect bullets with their bare hands and beat enemies down. The game also has a unique satellite robot system, whereby collecting alpha and beta coins dropped from crates, you summon hovering drones that provide different benefits depending on what coins you collect, such as directional gunfire or shields. Collecting a specific combination of 3 coins allows you to merge with the drones, transforming you into an invincible powered suit for a short duration, which adds some strategy to the resource management. The artwork is really good on the NES, surprisingly detailed and a brilliant use of shading and shadows to give the art more depth. The Legend of Kage 2, 2008. Although there was a great Ninja Gaiden game for the Nintendo DS, The Legend of Kage 2 handles things way differently from that. Developed by Taito, you play as either the returning hero Kage or the new Kunoichi Chihiro, tasked with rescuing the Shogun's daughter, Princess Kurihime, from demonic warlords. While the original was known for its floaty, high-flying jumps, the sequel is noticeably weightier and more precise. The game utilizes the twin screens of the DS to create a much more vertical playing field, and the air dash and wall run abilities take advantage of this new verticality. You'll have to constantly be paying attention to enemies and paths above you, as well as to the sides, and with how the screens are separated, you'll be flicking your eyes up and down a lot trying to coordinate between the 2 screens. The power-up system grants very powerful abilities that increase DPS, such as energy slashes or throwing multiple shurikens. And as this is a combo-based high-scoring game, you'll want to master the systems, go super fast, and kill as quickly as you can to get the high scores. Ninja Crusaders, 1990. Developed by the arcade veterans at NMK and published by Sammy, this title is set in a post-apocalyptic world where humanity has been nearly wiped out by a robotic alien force known as the Kylok. You take control of one of the last surviving ninjas, tasked with reclaiming the Earth from these extraterrestrial invaders. Other than the fact you're playing as a ninja, there are no other Japanese references at all that I can see. But I suppose being a ninja is central to the gameplay. Let me explain. The core mechanic is the transformation system. You can equip one of 4 weapons: a shuriken, a kusarigama, a bow staff, or a sword, and each one has different attack speeds and length. By collecting magic scrolls, you can transform into an animal spirit corresponding to your current weapon. The shuriken turns you into a fast-moving tiger. The bow staff grants the flight of a falcon. The kusarigama turns you into a giant, rad scorpion. And the sword transforms you into a dragon. It's a difficult one-hit death game, but it's surprisingly fun, especially transforming and tearing your way across the level. Playing these games, I'm now kinda hoping for a 2D Ninja Gaiden revival, like, what they did with Prince of Persia or Castlevania Belmont's Curse. It makes me wonder what it is about cyberpunk and ninjas that makes them mesh together so well. I hope you found something new and fun with 15 Ninja Gaiden clones, as I certainly have found some unique gameplay and artistic takes playing these.